All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. One of the persons that we were very fortunate to get on the program today was Colonel Josh McConkey. He's an emergency preparedness liaison officer for the West Virginia Joint Task Force, NCR, which is the National Capital Region. And he is on the Adult in the Room podcast today. And Colonel, thanks so much for coming on. Dr. Josh McConkey, thank you so much for coming on the Adult in the Room podcast.
Thank you very much.
I know you've been there for a few minutes. Does any of this that I've been talking about resonate with where you're at right now?
Boy, seeing a lot of things that I have not seen before, and it's certainly disturbing.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And of course, now it resulted in Sarah Beckstrom dying and Andrew Wolf fighting for his life, and a guy who we thought was a friend, and it turns out he wasn't, clearly, Ramanullah Lochinwall. I had to write it down because I will never be able to say that off the top of my head. What happened there? What do you know?
From what they've found out so far, this is under investigation. So certainly no official statements, but it appears that he, when he got to the United States over this last several years, has become radicalized, like right here in our own country.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of contact with individuals in Afghanistan. I know, Kash Patel and the FBI are working 24/7 on this and following all leads. So they will find the answers for us eventually here, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, this guy, he came all the way from Washington State to Washington, D.C. to commit those murders or do something that was something he was just driven to do. And I guess since he was a Muslim and he was a person who was Taliban or very far ISIS related, that he had it in him to do that. And it's incredibly sad. You've written a book. In fact, this is something I want to ask you about because Be the Weight Behind the Spear. This is a book to people who are, what did you call them? The COVID generation?
Yes. This, that whole last half of Generation Z, the COVID generation that we shut out of schools,
Yeah.
shut out of churches, and shut out of communities, they're struggling right now.
Yeah, they are. And you know what? There's a spiritual battle, if you will, for the futures of those kids, for the souls of those kids. And I don't mean that necessarily in a church-driven way. What I mean is in a secular way for the kids of that era to be easily persuaded to hate their country. And this is a help, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a call to action for everyone in this country. Our best resource is our people. It's teachers, coaches, volunteers, and families. That's what sets us apart. That's what makes us different. And we need to own this problem together. It's easy to pass the blame to those that were involved during COVID, making some of those poor decisions. But we still have to pick up those pieces. And as an emergency doctor, I see the anxiety, I see the depression, and then unfortunately a pretty alarming rise in suicides. And, between that and being a military commander and then working with that same generation as a commander, boy, they just lack resiliency skills and simple leadership and ability to communicate. So
They really do.
The social media world has been horrible for them.
They cannot cope. I'm sorry to interrupt. They can't cope.
Oh,
Tell me more. Tell me more and tell me how this is all playing into that.
Yeah, when it was at the worst, really, as an emergency doctor, you just keep doing the same thing over and over. You feel like you're just beating your head against the wall, like somebody has to do something. And then when I became a commander, and that was still pervasive through the military. I mean, there were people and some individuals that had been there for a hot minute, and then they were just going to quit because they weren't getting promoted right away, or they weren't getting some bonus money. It's like, hey, listen, why don't you just go to the basic course first before you pin on general? let's just start off with basic, and then let's talk with the let's just talk about some officer advanced courses and captain career courses. Nobody really gets made a general, within the first 6 months of them coming into the military, and just the entitlement, and it was quite shocking. Now, that perception is their reality. So the really challenging part was, how do we reach this generation? How do we bring them back into the fold? And so that was the real challenge during my 3 years in command, and was very successful with that. But that's why I wrote the book. It's for people to engage their communities and help this generation before it's too late.
Okay, well, those communities are seeing stuff like this. For example, outside, I this is in the Capitol, I guess, the DC, and this is billboards aimed at troops is asking, is this what you signed up for? Well, isn't that the question you just talked about?
Well, I heard what you were speaking a little bit earlier, and you
Uh-huh.
look back at World War II with
Yes.
that informational warfare, like Tokyo Rose, right?
Right.
Out there on the radio, trying to sow doubt into GI's minds. This is crazy. I can't believe we're seeing this in our own country. I can't believe we're seeing this outside of our military installations. And then you talk about those lawmakers making a video that was
Yeah.
incredibly inappropriate. You talk about all the political division we had in the 1960s. Can you imagine lawmakers making some type of video or movie and putting it out there during the Vietnam War? I mean, this
Uh,
is this is absolutely
uh
mind-boggling.
It is, and it's happening, apparently all around, where soldiers congregate. I wonder if it's over by Camp Pendleton. I'm thinking about, or JBLM, or places along the West Coast. Did you go airborne just to pull security for ICE? I mean, they really are trying to sell the idea that what is going on right now to secure our country is wrong. And yeah,
What
go ahead.
they're completely disregarding is that the men and the women that are there in DC right now and some of the other cities, they volunteered for that. This is exactly what they signed up for. They want to make their communities a safer place. If someone came into Raleigh, North Carolina and started rioting and burning cars and just destroying things, I served 9 years in the Army
Mm,
National Guard. I was at the Nebraska Guard. But that's that defense support of civil authorities, and just these are your friends. These are your neighbors. These aren't foreign invaders. They
yeah,
volunteered for these assignments. And when you see, the two individuals, especially Sarah, that just lost her life,
yeah.
they volunteered for that.
Mm,
They gave up their Thanksgiving. They volunteered for two other individuals to go home that had children and families. They were there less than 24 hours. And then you had this very motivated individual drive all the way across the country from Bellingham, Washington,
mhm.
days driving, with the sole intent of killing American soldiers, and that's shocking.
Well, I think that's what he was doing. He certainly wanted to commit an act of jihad because, as my friend Robert Spencer pointed out in his piece recently, why was the DC National Guard shooter naked except for a pair of socks? And at first I saw that and I went, "Oh, okay." He's an expert on jihad and that sort of thing, and I thought, well, it's because that we are told now, because there are so many um, hidden operators that came over the border over the past 4 years, in addition to now these people from Afghanistan, and they are some are just jihadists. It's they believe that part of the Quran where it says, well, you know what? I don't know. I can't remember. You probably know more than I do. I can't remember if it's the Medina portion or the Mecca portion where it embraces the idea of jihad, or if it's just the Hadith, and I can't remember. Be that as it may, this guy certainly took it to heart and came across and did that. And so Robert Spencer's viewpoint is we know why he took his clothes off after shooting him, because he was ready to get shot so he could go and be ready to go for his 72 virgins. It's exactly what happened. Is that wild? I mean,
It's incredibly disturbing, is what it is.
yeah.
And we all know that we wear that uniform in public. As sad as it is, I had to counsel my men and women, like, listen, don't wear your uniform outside the gates. When we leave,
Mhm.
when we drive home, when you go out to dinner, put on civilian clothes. When you put on the uniform, it does make you a target. It's something we've really briefed on for really the last 10 years or more.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad, like right here in our own country, right in our nation's capital, that two individuals were gunned down there.
That's sort
It's
of the point, wasn't it?
it's shocking.
That's probably the point, huh?
It's just so many thoughts run through your mind. I mean, everyone that's out there. We have 2,100 National Guard men and women that are out serving right now in the Washington D.C. area, and they're all thinking that that could be me.
Yeah, they are. Uh, Jordan writes in, I commend you, Josh, for your book and for your service to our nation. Leaders like yourself are so encouraging to all of us patriots. And I certainly second that as well. Thank you so much, Jordan, for writing in on that. Yeah, okay. So what are you hearing from the West Virginia National Guard? That's where you liaise, or with whom you will liaise. What are you thinking?
So, I talked with the communications director for Governor Morrissey on Wednesday evening.
Mm,
Just talking. There were initial reports. There were some conflicting reports that the two guard members had been killed early on, and the
right.
governor unfortunately had some incorrect information, and they
Yeah.
corrected that immediately. So I had just reached out to the communications director. I haven't talked with him since Wednesday evening, but I know West Virginians are hurting.
Yeah, they are. So, of course they are. We all are. I noticed that in fact, I have lots of pictures that I wanted to share with you on some of these National Guardsmen and women who are out there. It's crazy what they're doing out there. I want to, let's see, making friends. Check this out. It's kind of fun. She said, hopefully, is now I'm looking desperately for my photo, but hold on. Never fear. Never fear. Okay.
I
It's
know those
beautiful.
members they take a lot of pride in what they're doing.
Yeah.
This is the face of our nation, and the decrease in the violent crimes and all crime. I mean, that's something to be proud of. They're part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah. I think, let's see. Oh, here we go. Finally. Here's a guy who found a dog.
Mm.
I mean, I love that. Just because we got these guys, they're all over the place. They're on the metro. They're riding on the metro. They're walking the streets. They're down by the ball yard. They're doing all kinds of things. And they are making their presence known because that's what their job is, to sort of deter anybody who might want to do something bad to somebody else who's an innocent on the streets of DC. I don't see anything wrong with that. It has done nothing but help.
The
You?
majority of Americans are these are good visions for them. When they see these people walk in their communities, they feel safer. It's a lot harder to like carjack somebody or steal the rims in their car when there's a National Guard member like standing right next to you. Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, you can't argue the results. It's crystal clear.
Sure. And of course, people say, oh, well, that's not their job. And here is the honor procession for Sarah Beckstrom the other day. So
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking. It really is. Okay. So they're out there. They volunteered for this, but they didn't volunteer to get shot at. I mean, yes, they know, but some wackadoodle who's going to come on the streets and kill them,
I mean, you
two
don't
people.
expect something like that to happen on home soil. I've served in combat. I spent time in Iraq in 2007, and direct and indirect fire. You don't expect something like that just serving right in your nation's capital. It's but we certainly brief, and they knew there were some risks for that,
Hmm.
but I don't think anybody really thought they would see something like this.
I saw the senator say the other day, Lisa, what's her name, who was part of the seditious six, as they're calling them. And she talked about the fact that, oh, well, we're just afraid that those National Guardsmen are just going to go shoot people willy nilly. And it's a matter of fact, it looks like somebody came up and did that back to them before, right after she said that. He was probably on the road. Who knows? This man was obviously in pain and lost his mind. But, what do you think about somebody saying that?
You know, when you see members of Congress and senators trying to score political points and just stow that type of like just insane divisive like rhetoric, and then you see some of the signs and things that are posted outside. I hadn't seen any of those personally, but
Oh, yeah.
it it's hard to imagine what's going through their mind when they're doing that. I mean, my mind just goes back to World War II with like Tokyo Rose on the radio, but this is coming from our own members in the legislative branch.
Mhm.
It's incredibly inappropriate.
Now she's dead, and we've got another guy fighting for his life, and this little girl is dead, 20 years old. You know, it's kind of interesting that he would shoot a woman. I guess I wonder what that was all about. If he did that on purpose, or if she just happened to be there in uniform, or what have you.
Yeah, I know they'll have a lot more in the investigation, but I'm sure he just walked out and just shot the first 2 people he saw.
Yeah. And since you do have, you're a doctor and you liaise with the West Virginia National Guard, what else do we know that you can share with us?
Well, yeah, I just know that she had some life-threatening injuries immediately. A severe head injury really wasn't going to be survivable, and I know her
Mm.
father had made some public posts on that as well, and just my heart pours out for both the families and everybody in West Virginia. Just as far as anything other injuries, we're still that's under investigation and won't be releasing that.
Okay, well, man, um, it's sad. That's it. It's just sad. It's sad. I just kind of wonder what the author in you would tell people who thought they wanted to, volunteer for the National Guard. Now when they're not so
Well,
sure.
well, this you're part of something bigger than yourself. And we have been making these sacrifices, the men and women that have worn this uniform for well over 250 years. And there's a tremendous amount of pride in that. And so these two died heroes just the same.
Well, we
They
got one still
stepped up.
alive. Adam's still alive, so thank
Yeah, yeah,
goodness,
no,
right?
still alive. But
Or Andrew, excuse me.
yeah, Andrew. But Sarah, she died a hero. And
Yeah.
they took a bullet for this country, and we still take great pride in our service. And every person who's ever worn this uniform, all the families, I mean, I hopefully all 350 million people in America have a tremendous amount of respect for that. And our prayers and our thoughts go out to them and their family.
Thank you for your time. Be the weight behind the spear, and I guess you're talking about us. We need to be the weight behind the spear.
Yeah, that's
To
everyone in this country. They need to step up and take ownership of that. Get out there and coach, volunteer, go to some schools, some churches. Even if you don't like people, there's something you can do. Go to some animal shelters. Like those animals are emotional support animals for somebody. So we all have a different set of skills and gifts, and what we do matters every single day, and people need
Yeah.
to realize that.
Yeah, that's true. And thank you for your time, and thank you for your ability to give us some insights and, good stuff. Appreciate it, doctor.
Thank you very
Appreciate it
much.
very
Appreciate it.
much. God bless you. Thank you. Well, just a little insight into what's going on in DC, and they're walking the streets and they're doing any manner of things that help people. And that's good. I mean, that's a good thing.